The last bastion of opposition against Syria's Bashar al Assad is being pushed to the brink by an intensifying military assault. The Syrian regime's attempt to conquer Idlib province by force has also put Turkish soldiers in harm's way. Turkish troops stationed in Idlib at a dozen observation posts have been deliberately targeted by Assad's forces. 7 Turkish soldiers and a civilian contractor were killed in one of those attacks on the 3rd of February. Turkey swiftly retaliated, and according to Defense Minister Hulusi Akar, several dozen regime soldiers were killed. And in a rare show of frustration, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan directly called on Assad's main backer, Russia, to stick to past agreements and to understand Turkey's sensitivities in Syria. He also gave a stern warning to the Syrian regime to withdraw to a previously agreed line or face the consequences.
Şu anda 12 gözlem noktamızın
If the Syrian regime will not retreat from Turkish observation posts in Idlib by the end of February, Turkey itself will be obliged to make this happen.
And to break that all down, joining me now is Vehbi Baysan, who is an assistant professor at Haldun University, and Yakzan Shishakly, who is the co-founder of the Maram Foundation for Relief and Development based in Gaziantep. Gentlemen, welcome to Straight Talk. It's good to have you here. Vehbi, President Erdogan said the latest attack amounted to a new era in Syria and said any further escalation would be responded to in kind. So what does this new era signal?
Well, actually, Turkey's position is very clear. Turkey initiated the Astana process as well as Sochi, and at the same time really supported what was going on in Switzerland. But the reason the Turkish soldiers in Idlib, based on the decisions taken in Astana and Sochi, so they're not there as occupying forces, but rather it's as they call it, de-escalation zone, and hopefully the tension would de-escalate and would pave way for peace. So what Turkey was trying to say, that we should stop bloodshed in Idlib, that the possible one, because the regime and Russian forces were determined to attack from air, land, and sea and clear the whole area.
They've been breaching these agreements.
Well, that's the thing. That's why Turkey is furious, because these checkpoints are there and our soldiers are not on the combat preparation. They're just simply
observing.
Observing, and yet they were attacked, and all this young man killed brutally. I mean, it's unacceptable. So that's why Turkey is saying, we have an agreement. That's the very reason we are manning these posts. We are not there to fight, and yet getting all these attacks. So that's why, understandably, they're furious.
Yeah, the deaths of Turkish soldiers was the first time in the 9-year-old conflict.
Yeah.
Yakzan, what can we expect by the end of February, and what happens if the Assad regime continues to move further to the north?
Well, it's already the biggest man disaster made after World War II. So we've seen and we witnessed over 500,000 people just in the past 2 months moved from northern Hama, South Idlib, to the border of Turkey. If the regime move further to take Idlib city, the numbers in Idlib city is around 500,000 people to 1 million. And we're going to see more and biggest disaster, and which is, it would put too much pressure on the border and on the people who's already living in the streets and their cars and everywhere. And with this cold weather, we're going to see like even worse situation as we're seeing right now.
Does the regime see all people, let's say the Idlib of residents, for example, as terrorists?
Well, yeah. I mean, in the past 9 years, everybody did not agree with the regime is a terrorist. Every territory, whether...
So there would be no mercy on them, right?
At all. And they even make sure they cannot go back. Even the Russians try to claim they have a humanitarian corridor back to the regime area. Nobody is crossing. And every time they see 100 or 200 people crossing, we see a crime from the regime forces against those civilians.
Vehbi, Turkey warned Russia to stay out of this process and stick to the past agreements. Has Idlib become the greatest threat to the Turkey-Russia relations after downing of a Russian jet?
Well, we very much hope that it doesn't really further escalate between Turkey and Russia, because they are cooperating in the other areas. And at least they initiated, together with Iran, of course, the Astana process, and Putin was
They're
there,
going to
Erdogan
meet
going.
in Tehran.
Hopefully. So there are meetings and all that. So whole idea is to give chance to peace. But however, when these agreements are breached and when our soldiers are attacked and killed, but also now look at the regime and Russian forces are pushing people from south to north and east to west. So they don't allow them to go anywhere else but towards Turkey. So that is the dangerous thing, because we're already hosting millions of Syrians here, which is fine by us as citizens. But as President Erdogan said, I mean, we can't really have another million or two in this country, especially the international community is not very helpful in that. So, and what we want to see on the ground there is the international organizations for refugees, these people in need. We don't want to see any humanitarian crisis beyond our borders. But as far as I know, maybe you know better, that actually they are nowhere to be seen to help these people.
How will this humanitarian crisis be addressed? I mean, Turkey is setting up temporary shelters, 10,000 of them. Will it solve the problem? When do you think the international community should shoulder Turkey's burden on this?
There's no way to stop the mass killing and the mass refugee IDP crisis unless you stop the war. Because you're talking, Turkey is setting some shelters, other governments are trying to pay some money. Today, Mark Lowcock mentioned $40 million from the SERF emergency from United Nations office, New York. But this will not be enough. We're talking about millions of people who've been displaced forcibly overnight with no clothes, no food, a very bad medical situation, and in winter time. So there is no way to stop this unless they stop the war.
All right. Russia fell short of sending its condolences to Turkey after Turkey lost 8 of its citizens. Yet the U.S. quickly moved in and expressed its heartfelt feelings and said the United States is ready to support to Turkey. Why now? What's at stake for the United States? And do you believe that the United States some way will pressure on the international community to help people in Idlib?
We very much hope that to happen. It's very unfortunate that Russia did not even extend their condolences, really. I mean, because I know there are personal relations at the highest level, and they should not have behaved that way. So far as the United States is concerned, they're a superpower, no doubt, but for some reason they don't want to too much involved in Syria, and they reduce their presence there. But we know they can play a key role in humanitarian issues. So I think they should be more involved in this. And probably they don't want to escalate the situation between Turkey and Russia and Syria in the region. But I mean, I don't know, I have this view, I mean, the view that the less the Middle Eastern Studies departments they have in their country, which many of them are shutting down because no funding, their policy in the Middle East suffers enormously.
So how can they help?
U.S., I mean, we're talking about the biggest or the most important country now in the world, where they have the power and they have the...
What are they going to do? I mean,
well,
are they going to take these people out of the region and resettle them?
They can push the Russian and pressure the Russian and the regime to stop the war. Because again, helping the people with aid is like a band-aid on the wound. You cannot do this. You need to help and pressure the Russian and stopping the war. And what's really also coming is the cross-border resolution, which is a big thing. I mean, if they stop a cross-border resolution, we're going to be even worse situation from what we're seeing right now.
Vehbi, last question to you. Wary of the developments both in the eastern and the western part of the Euphrates, President Erdogan signaled there are going to be enlarged operations in and around the secured zones. What do you make of that? Has Turkey changed its Syria policy?
But no, I think since the beginning, Turkey had a very clear stand, which is like we have 450 kilometers border with Syria, and Turkey's security forces' job is to safeguard their citizens. So, and since 2011, probably the most brutal war going on there that the modern times ever seen. Over 500 people, 1,000 people got killed, and 12 million people displaced. So Turkey wants to secure their borders. Therefore, Turkey conducted other operations like Afrin and El-Bab. Turkey don't want to, probably, in my view, go into Idlib and kind of take over and stay there. Especially that there are this propaganda and fake news that Turkey doing this to get a chunk of Syria, which is not true. I mean, if Syria guarantees the safeguard of our borders, probably Turkey wouldn't be bothered this much. However, Turkey wants to be part of also any kind of humanitarian crisis which more likely to occur with the regime forces pushing people. People already mobilized, as we heard here. Turkey also wants to help them. So very much hope that just stays in humanitarian level.
All right, gentlemen, we're out of time. Thank you very much for joining me on Straight Talk. Appreciate it a lot.
Thank you.